All right, hello everybody. This is Joshua, and this is Joshua's Guide to APA. Okay, so let's just begin by looking at these two words. We have research and we have plagiarism. So, what's the difference between research and plagiarism? I want you guys just to stop the video right now and take a minute and try to write down what you think these words mean. Okay, well, let's take a look. So first, research. Research is when we're using the words and ideas of experts in order to prove that our writing is accurate or that our speaking is accurate. Basically, we're trying to show that what we say is correct, and we're using someone else's ideas to do that. Now, with plagiarism, we're using someone else's words and ideas in our own work, in our own writing or speaking, but we're not saying where that information comes from. Okay, so what this means is that we're saying someone else's words and ideas are actually our words and ideas, right? Because when you're writing, everyone will think what you say is your own idea unless you say that it isn't. So I think from this, we can see that they're very similar, right? We're still using other people's ideas in both of these, or their words in both of these activities, but the difference is that in research, we're showing it, but with plagiarism, we're not. Now, research is good. It shows you've worked hard, it shows that you're careful, and it shows that you're diligent. But plagiarism is the opposite. It shows that you have not worked hard. It shows that you're careless. And it also could show that you're dishonest. Now, by this I mean that you're cheating, that you're stealing other people's stuff. And it's important to notice this. It's hard to know which is true. If I'm reading something that you write, and you've taken somebody else's ideas, or you've taken their writing, I can't know if it's an accident or if you're trying to cheat. I just have to guess. And so that's the problem. By not saying where something comes from, it's basically the same as stealing. So in order to move away from plagiarism and to show that we've done good research, we're going to use APA. Now, APA is one of the methods of citation that we use, and citation is showing other people's work, right? Showing that it belongs to other people. So there are other types of this that you can use. One of them is called MLA. One of them is called Chicago. It depends on which program you're in, right? So APA is used a lot in social science. MLA is used a lot in English. Chicago is used a lot in business. So your own program may not be using APA, but the basic idea is the same. You're showing that your information comes from someone else. It's not yours originally. You didn't make it up. So APA citation is also known as the name-date method. And it's important to remember this because this is something we're always going to be using. We're always going to use the name and we're always going to use the date. And the name is always going to come before the date. So first the name and then the date. APA citation shows you're using other people's words and idea. For APA citation, you need an in-text citation and a reference page. Now you'll notice that this up here has just changed, right? And I've just added this in because it's what APA stands for, the American Psychological Association. And that gives you a little bit of an idea as we were going back up here for that there are different types of citation used. It just gives you an idea that this is the kind of places that would use APA. So like the psychological, so social science. That's probably where you're going to be using APA most in your post-secondary programs. Okay, so with APA citation, there's two different ways to do it. There's an in-text citation, and there's also a reference page, and we're going to look at these in more detail. But we're going to start with in-text citation, and there are two kinds of in-text citation that you're going to be using. The first is a paraphrase, and the citation will look like this: name and date. And then there's a direct quote, and that will be name, date, and also the page number. And so that's this kind, in-text citation. And we'll come to this a little bit later on in the video as well. So let's start with looking at an in-text citation. Now, I've taken two different parts of the same research article, and this is written using APA style to show that they've done research. Now, this is a combination of their own research and other people's research. So it's really important that they're very clear which is their own work and which is somebody else's work. So if we look over here at the in-text citation, you'll notice that we've got the name, Boyd, and then we've got the year right beside it, 2000. Then at the very end of the paper, in the reference page, we can see we've got this same Boyd 2000. Okay, so this reference is for this article. Boyd FD 2000, Nonverbal Behavior of Effective Teachers of At-Risk African American Male Middle School Students. I'm sure that it's very, very, very interesting. And it's not even a full paper. It's actually an unpublished PhD dissertation. So it never was actually published. It was something to become a doctor, to get his PhD, or to get her PhD. I'm not sure who it is. FD could be a boy or a girl, right? So we'll start with this in-text citation, and here we go. And you can see we've got it written out here, Boyd 2000, who carried out the research entitled, and I just read it for you, right? So we're referencing this person. We're saying that some of this recently carried out research in this field is this person, right? We're using we're talking about them. So here it is. It's the same person, Boyd, here. So that's an in-text citation. It's in the text, right? It appears in the text, in your writing. That's why it's called in text, because it's in your writing. And it shows you the name and the date. Okay, so that's all we have here, the name and the date. We're going to use this to find the reference at the end. So that's all that this is doing, is it's just showing us this information comes from this reference, and you can find it here at the end. The full reference at the end, it's at the end of the paper, and you're going to have a reference page. It's going to have a title like this, References, and it's going to show all of the information that you need to find the material. And you'll notice if we look over here at the Abercrombie article from 1973, it tells you the title, right? It tells you the journal that it was in, and it tells you exactly which part of the journal it was in. So if you are looking to read this article, if you want more information, because they're not going to give you everything from that article, they're just going to give you a little bit of information. If you want to read more, then you know how to find it. You can search it using this information. And we often do that when we're researching. We often will look at one reference and it will take us to the next reference. And this might actually be more useful than this is. So we're using it to help people find out where to find information as well. So we've got two types of in-text citations, right? We've got a paraphrase and we've got a direct quote. And we're going to start with the paraphrase. Okay, and remember that we're talking about this, in-text citations, not the references at the end. We're talking about the actual in your writing. So paraphrasing is using other people's information and ideas, but You're saying it in your own words. You're using your own writing. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Here you can see this is what you're reading. Right? You have your web page, or you have your article that you're reading, and this is what the article says. The concept of task has been commonly identified as a practice that keeps a focus on meaning. Okay, so whatever you're writing, this is the information you want to use. And don't worry if you don't understand it. It doesn't really matter. This is what you find you're going to use this information. But what you write in your own paper is a task is an activity that is concerned with meaning. Now, the idea is the same, but the words are different. This is someone else's writing, and this is your writing. So it's a paraphrase. You're taking their information, it's their idea, but you're using your own words. Okay? Now, that's great. And that's what we really want to be doing. You want to be reading information and then using your own words to explain it. And most of the time, this is the way you want to do it. But you have to still say where the information comes from, because it's not your ideas. Right? So you have to say where you find this information, and we're going to use the name and the date of the person that made it. So here it is. A task is an activity that is concerned with meaning, and that's my writing. But it comes from this person. This is the name and the date. This is the person up here, right? So that's their last name, and that's the date that they published the thing that they were writing. This paper was published in 2008, so there I go. That's the first way I can do it. And that's fine. Notice it comes at the very end of the sentence. There should also be a period here. Okay? Because we don't want to put the period here. This is connected to this sentence. It's part of the same sentence. This is one big sentence. So put your period right here. Here's another way to look at it. According to Saba, 2018, a task is an activity that is concerned with meaning. Again, it's the same. It's what I wrote. It's my paraphrase, right? These are the same. So, what's different about these two? Well, in this one, I'm actually putting his or her name, the author's name, into my writing. I'm using it in my writing. According to this person, a task is an activity that is concerned with meaning. I like to do this. I think that this is the best way, because you're using them in, and you're speaking about them, right? You're actually putting their name in your writing instead of putting it as a reference. So I like it. It also makes it easier to say, Saba also says that, and you could say that in your next sentence, right? You can use the name again in your next sentence. So I like it. But just notice that when we do that, the author's name is written as part of our sentence, and then in brackets, right beside the author's name, we put the date, right? The year, just the year. I don't need every part of the date either. And that's also very important to remember. Even if it says February 24th, 2018, in the in-text citation, in your writing, you only need 2018. The next example is a direct quote. And this is going to look very much the same as what we did, but there's just a little difference, a few small differences. Now, when we're using the exact same words, which means copy and pasting, right? When you're copy and pasting the exact same words that they said, you will need to use quotation marks, and that's these, right? The words in the middle. You need quotation marks to show that someone else said it. The citation will look the same, but you will also need to include a page number, right? So remember, with the paraphrase, we just had these two. When you're actually using their words, you also need to show where it comes from. Okay? This is so that if I get the book and I want to find the exact same part of that book, I can go to the page quickly. I don't have to read the whole thing to find those words, right? I can find it more quickly. paraphrasing, we might take a lot of different information and put it into one sentence, right? So it might not be possible to find that one part because it might be said in a lot of different parts. We're making it into one sentence. We're using our own words. But in this case, we're taking the exact same words. So it's very easy to find it. So we need to say where it came from. Notice that if there is no page number, right? If you're using a website and there's no page number, then you want to use paragraph numbers, okay? And instead of a P for page, we write P-A-R-A with a period and then the number. So this would be paragraph 3. It's also important to notice that anytime we have no date, right? And that's going to happen a lot if you're using web pages, like Wikipedia doesn't have any date. Then you're going to use n.d. And that means n no d date. Okay, so let's look what a direct quote looks like, right? And you remember that with the paraphrase, you read this and then you write something different, your own words. But in a direct quote, you read the concept of a task has been commonly identified as a practice that keeps a focus on meaning, and you write the concept of task has been commonly identified as a practice that keeps a focus on meaning, right? It's the same. Now, notice we've got the same thing here with the name and the date, but we've added the page number. And this came from an academic journal and it had page numbers. So I can use the page number. If it didn't have a page number, I would have to count the paragraphs. Okay? So you can see it's a little bit more difficult to actually do the direct quote because you need to know where it comes from. You need to add more information. But it's a little easier because you don't have to change the words. Here's the other way. Remember, we had the author's name in our writing. So according to Saba 2018. But then what's different is at the end, we've put the page number here. Okay? So remember what this looked like here, right? It was almost the same for the paraphrase. And now here we are, and it's almost the same. It just has the page number at the end. When should we use direct quotes? When should we use paraphrasing? I believe you should almost always use paraphrasing. You should write using your own words. It's your writing, and it shows a skill, which is called summarizing and paraphrasing, right? That's a skill. It's an academic skill. So it's good. It shows that you can read and understand and explain it in your own words. When you should use a direct quote. When the writing is very important. When the words that they use are important. That's when you want to use a direct quote. And what I mean by that is you may think that there is a special meaning in some of the words they choose. Okay? So you don't want to lose those special meanings, right? Because words can carry a lot of smaller meaning, and sometimes if you change the word, you might change some of that meaning. So when you really want to keep it exactly the same, or maybe you just really like it, it just sounds really good, so you want to keep it, that's when we use a direct quote. If you use too much of a direct quote, okay, if you have more than 50 words, check the guides for the exact number though, because it can change, or I may be incorrect when I say 50, but it's a large number of words. Then we use something that's called a block quote, and it looks different. And I'm not going to talk about that here, but if you're using a very long direct quote, look at a guide to see how to do a block quote. Okay, if it's just one sentence, you'll be okay. you can use this style. But if you're using really long pieces of someone else's writing, there's another style that we're not going to talk about here, but it's called a block quote. So that was in-text citations. And now we're going to look at the reference page at the end of your essay or your report. Notice that there is both a 6th and 7th edition of APA. 7th edition is new. It just came out last year. It's not currently being used very much, but some people are. It's a little bit easier. So I suggest you check with your professors, is this APA 6th or 7th edition, and then use the guides for which one they want you to use. So it's always important to check with other guides for how to do proper referencing. Don't just use this video. This is just meant for a basic introduction. So generally, when you're doing your reference page, it's going to be the last name of the author and then their first initials. And that means just the first letter of their name. You're not going to write their whole name, just the first letter of their name. Then you use a period to show the name is finished. Then in brackets you put the year, and then another period to show that the year is finished. Then you'll write the title, and the title will usually be italicized, right? So that means the sideways letters. And then if it's an online source, which you guys will likely be using online sources, you're going to say where it comes from. Okay, so retrieved from, and then the website address, HTTP, and we'll see that. So here's a British Council website. The website title is Nonverbal Communication. It's made by the British Council, so there was no author, so I had to use the company or the institution. If it was like Fanshawe College, this would say Fanshawe College. If it was Wikipedia, it'll say Wikipedia. There was no date, so it's n.d. for no date. And then retrieved from, and this is the link to the website. So if I click on this, it will take me there. For an academic journal, it will look a little different, right? This is that Saba article that I cited earlier, that I used as the example, right? Differences between task, exercise, and drill in L2 education. A systems thinking perspective. Now, it's a little different here because the title is not italicized. The title of the academic journal is. So it was in this journal, Advances in Language and Literary Studies. That might seem very confusing, so always check with the guides. Okay, like OWL Purdue website or Fanshawe College's APA referencing guides. The library has a lot of them. The Learning Center has them. Always check, how do I reference this? Because if you're using an academic journal and a website and a book and a YouTube video, all of those will have a little bit of a different style. Although it does generally do last name, first initial, year. If you're using a chapter in a book, but the book is every chapter is written by a different person, there's a different way to reference that. I mean, you won't be able to memorize it. You don't need to memorize it, but know that it's different and you need to look it up. If you're like me and you have been doing this for a while, and because I'm doing a master's degree using APA, I've gotten pretty good at this. I can write out an academic journal reference without looking up how to do it. I just know the way it's supposed to look, right? I know what it means. This is the page number, for example. I just know that because I look at it a lot. You guys don't do that, so I don't expect you to know the different ways to do this, but you must look it up. So here are just some basic helpful tips. One, you'll only use the author's last name in your in-text citations. The name always comes before the date. Paraphrasing is better than direct quotes unless the author's words are very important. If you are using many sentences that came from the same source, it's better to put the author's name in the sentence, like here, Gall 2019 notes that in your sentence. And then you can use the author's name again if you use that same reference, right? He also says that. So then I know that it's still coming from that same reference. As long as you don't change your reference, then you would have to do this one again. But if you're using the same reference and you're referencing again and again that same source, you can use this. You can say, he also says that. That's me, Gall, Joshua Gall. Take a minute and look at the PowerPoint if you can, because it'll be easier to see. But try to find some of the references. There's a bunch of them. This is that Saba article that we talked about, and so it's well researched. This person is very, very good, and they have made a very, very good piece of writing that uses other people's ideas. So take a minute and try to find all of them. Okay, let's just jump in. And I've put an arrow there on one of them, and it's one of the one that it's using the author's name in the actual writing. So here it goes. For example, Noonan believed that through tasks, L2 language learners could do something. Who knows what? You'd have to read it to find out. But notice the name and the date, right? Here's another one. As Ellis, 2009, acknowledged, CLT is traced back to the constructivist theory of learning motivated by Dewey. And here's another citation. And in fact, he said it, Dewey said it in more than one place, right? He said it in 1916, and he also said it in 1933. So the same author and two different works, two different things that they've written. So there's a lot. Here's one up here. Okay, this is one where they didn't use the author's name. The communicative language teaching has its origins in understanding the complexity of communication interfaces. And then that's the person that said this. That's their idea. But notice, this is the author's own words because there's no page number. This is a paraphrase. Okay? And you'll notice, look here, paraphrase, right? Paraphrase. This is a really good one because this is actually two citations together, right? So they said from here, I guess, yeah, this whole idea here, this whole sentence, the theory of language underpinning, starting here, this person said it, and a different person also said it, right? So it's a cross-reference. There's two references. Two different people said the same thing. And when you do that, you use a semicolon to separate the two references. But two different people said this. And the author is saying, hey, look at how smart I am. I've read this one, and I've also read this one. And they both say the same thing. And that's a very strong thing to do. If you're very, very strong academically, you can put more than one together, right? Two different people have the same idea, and you put both of those references into one reference. It's very, very, very good. I'm not going to expect you to do that, but that's a good thing. Anyways, have some fun. Go back and look at it. In conclusion, we need to do research in order to be successful in post-secondary, right? You're not going to be able to do your post-secondary without researching. We need to show where our information comes from, right? Otherwise, it's stealing, right? If we don't show it, it's a kind of stealing. Even if it's an accident, we have to assume it's stealing. We can't say, oh, maybe he just made a mistake, or oh, maybe she just made a mistake. APA is one kind of referencing. MLA, Chicago, APA, those are the three big ones. Check your program for which one you want to use. But just know you guys are going to be using EAP. In EAP, you're always going to be using APA. So until you're out of our EAP program, you will be using APA. For in-text citations, right, which means in your writing, and that can be a paraphrase or a direct quote, it's going to show the name and the date, okay? And we're going to use that to find the reference on the reference page at the end. And at the end of your paper, there is a reference page with a full citation. Okay, and this includes more information so that you can go and find that material by yourself. Now, here is a finished paper. All right, this is a finished paper in APA 6th edition. And when I said that APA 6th edition and APA 7th edition are different, one of the reasons why is the running head up here. In 6th edition, we use this. In 7th edition, we do not use this. We just have the title. So you'll see we've got a title, we've got a page number. This is a title page. Right? It's got the title, your name, the professor's name, the college, and the due date. Right? It's always double spaced. It's always Times New Roman 12-point font. Again, we've got the title and the date. Our title is bolded at the top. We're using indents for paragraphs, right? We've got our information here. We've got our citations in here. Here's another citation here. Okay? So here's your writing. And then at the end, you have a reference page. And the reference page is going to have the more information, right? The longer information. How to find it. Okay, this is not perfect. This was a student paper, so it's not a perfect example. This is actually incorrect to some degree. But it is also important to notice that the reference page is using a hanging indent. So the first line starts here and the other ones are indented. I have made a full video on how to do APA referencing formatting, and it's available for you in your online quizzes. So please go and check out that video if you want more information on how to do this, how to add the titles, how to make this look like an APA document like this.